Sunday, August 27th, 2017. Come out to Atlanta's premier jazz venue, St. James Live, where you'll find guitar virtuoso Rod Harris Jr. He'll be performing tracks from his solo debut, The Counsel of Elders, and much more. Don't forget, Rod Harris Jr., Sunday, August 27th, 2017, at St. James Live, 3220 Butner Road, Suite 240, Atlanta, Georgia, 30331. Doors open at 5 p.m. See you soon. Welcome to the Soulchild podcast, where we encourage you to think beyond what you hear. I'm your host, and I go by the name of Smooth. And audience, welcome back to the podcast. This is actually episode 70, and I wouldn't call it a landmark episode, but 70 is a nice round number. And if you follow me in the past, you know that I do a lot of album reviews. But this time I wanted to sort of change up the format, and I want to bring you guys or present to you an artist that I really admire, an artist that you should know, and it's actually a guitarist by the name of Rod Harris Jr. I had the pleasure of meeting Rod last year, 2016. I actually went to see him perform with one of his bands called Southwest Terminal, which you'll learn more about as we jump into the interview. And I actually met him at this concert venue in Low 5 Points, Atlanta, called Aisle 5. And I heard him play. I was really amazed, and I really didn't get to speak to him then, but I saw him probably a couple months later at one of Atlanta's premier jazz venues, St. James Live. And just a quick note, Rod, he'll actually be performing at St. James Live August 27th, 2017, and I'll have more details for you later on. But I met Rod, I introduced myself, I let him know that I admired his music, and we exchanged contacts, and it was about a year before I actually saw Rod again. I was on my way to D.C., and he was on his way to D.C. He was going to do a show with Musiq Soulchild, and we'll talk about that as we get into the interview. But I met Rod, and he agreed to come on the podcast, and I just love Rod's work ethic. He's an amazingly talented guitarist. He's primarily a jazz guitarist, but I won't just limit him to that. He can play and do pretty much anything you would want your guitarist to do. So I'm excited to present Rod to you guys. He just released his debut album, which is titled The Counsel of Elders. It's an amazing album. We'll get into that when Rod comes on. The Counsel of Elders, it's pretty much a tribute to Rod's immediate guitar influences, and we'll tell you who those are later on as we get into the interview. But I hope you guys enjoy, so sit back, enjoy the ride, and, without further ado, I want to present to you guys Rod Harris Jr. All right, audience, welcome back. So I want to welcome to the show. He's actually a first-timer on the podcast, and actually only the second person I've ever interviewed, but the first I've interviewed by myself, and I'm very excited to have the guy on the podcast. And audience, if you don't know him now, you'll know him very soon. An amazing guitarist by the name of Rod Harris Jr., and I want to introduce him to all of you. Rod, what's up, man?
What's going on, Jay? How you doing, man?
I'm pretty good, man. Glad to finally get you on the podcast. And, I've been telling everybody about you and how talented you are. And, you have an incredible resume. And I just wanted to share everything with you guys. So, Rob, before we start, let the audience know where they can find your music.
You can find my music on all the internet stores, iTunes, Amazon, and even Pandora, or you can go to my website at www.rodharrisjr.com. Click the album cover links, and it'll take you straight to CD Baby, where you can purchase it, and all the internet stores.
So, audience, Rod actually released his debut album titled The Counsel of Elders last year, 2016, and we'll dive deep into that. It's a really great album, and I just told Rod that I learned a lot while listening to it, so we'll dive into that and a few more things. But before we get into that, I want to play a quick game with Rod. It's called The Warm Up, and if you're a musician out there, if you're listening, you know, all musicians, you have to warm up at some point before you get started. It just helps out,
Right.
whether through scales or your major minor scales or intervals, whatever you want to do. So I got a quick game we'll play with Rod, and it's mainly I ask him a few pop culture questions. So Rod, I'll read off a question to you, and all you
Mm-hmm.
have to do is give me your answer, or you know, if you have any extra take on it, give me that as well.
Okay.
All right, so here we go. The first question is best show. What do you think is the best show? Game of Thrones, Power, Ballers, or Insecure?
Bro, I'm a power fanatic,
Yeah, yeah. That last episode was crazy, man.
man. I got hooked on this show like maybe like a couple of years ago, man. I had to go back, like most of us do and catch the first season. But once I got into it, I was binge watching like I was all the way, with almost like in 2 days. I watched all the episodes of the first season and I've been hooked ever since. But
Yeah,
yeah, I'm definitely a power man.
cool.
That's probably one of the only shows, I don't watch a whole lot of TV, but that's one that I have to catch every Sunday.
It's an amazing show, and audience, if you haven't caught last week's, well, the current episode, we're actually recording Monday, August 7th. But if you didn't catch last week's episode this past Sunday, you missed a treat.
Yeah.
Next question: who's the most hated person right now? LeVar Ball, Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, or Donald Trump?
You say who's the most what now?
Who's the most hated?
Oh,
You got LeVar
you
Ball, Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, or Donald Trump?
man, the most hated. You probably missed one of the main was O.J. Simpson.
Oh yeah, yeah he is. He finally. Well, he's not out yet, but he got
but
parole. So
I think probably Donald Trump, man. Like he still takes the cake because every day is something new to hate on. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, every day. All right, Rod. And I don't know if you're a sports fan, but let me
Yeah,
ask you
I am.
this. Okay. Well, whose side are you taking? Kyrie's or LeBron's?
Ah, Curry.
Kyrie.
I'm not LeBron is a great player. I would never take anything from his greatness as an athlete, but his attitude, I'm not, you can miss me with that. I would take Kyrie over LeBron.
Okay. You're a musician, of course, and all of your
Hmm.
music, like we said, audience earlier, it's on. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Music. I'm not sure if you're on Tidal, but if you are,
I
not
don't
yet.
know. I have to double check. I don't know. I might be.
Well, we'll find out. Let me ask you, what's your preferred music streaming platform? Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, Pandora?
As far as streaming,
Yeah,
Spotify.
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 Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And last question: pick your two Super Bowl teams for this coming season.
Oh, the Falcons, bro, all the way. I'm a diehard Falcons fan.
There you go.
ATL.
There you go. Matty Ice, Julio.
Yeah, man. We going all the way this year. We got a new offensive coordinator that ain't gonna throw us under the bus.
Right, right. Yeah, y'all got rid of that dictator, Kyle
Yeah,
Shanahan.
man. Yes, sir.
Cool. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So, Rod, take us back to the very beginning. When did you first know you wanted to become a musician?
All right. So I honestly when I was about 15, 16 years old, my family had just moved us. My dad actually had just moved the family to Atlanta from Jacksonville, Florida, and as a teenager, everybody, we're still trying to find ourselves and and find out what we want to do in life. But I knew from my dad because he was a musician also and songwriter and everything. I knew that music would be a part of my life, but I knew around 15, 16, I told my dad, I'm gonna be a producer. And he's like, well, son, you're not really a musician yet. How you gonna be a producer? So then the very next year, he gave me some money as he would always do on my birthday. You know, your parents give you money for your birthday. I was turned 17. He gave me 150 bucks and he was like, well, you can do whatever you want to do with it. So I made up in my mind, I want to go and buy a guitar. So I went to it was a place called Atlanta Discount Music on Windy Hill Road here in Atlanta, and I bought an acoustic guitar, and I just bought this old DVD at the time of this old man with an afro, kind of like the dude that used to paint the pictures, and he was
Uh-huh.
just showing me, different chords on the DVD, and I would watch the thing, and I knew from there I was like, "Man, I want to get really good at this.
Right.
And from there, I was in my senior year in high school, and I found a teacher at a local music store near where we were living at the time, and he motivated me, but he started pushing me instead because I wanted to be like Jimi Hendrix, Ernie Isley, all the cats that you hear on the radios and stuff, Lenny Kravitz, and he was like, "Well, man, you should check out Wes Montgomery. You should check out Miles Davis. You should check out John Coltrane." And it may have been something that he was going through. He was in his mid-20s, my teacher at the time. So I think it was something that his ear was getting hip to, and he was trying to pass that on to me, and it just stuck with me. When I heard he passed Miles's kind of blue record to me at
Uh-huh.
17, I was like, man, what is this? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And at first, being, a teenager, listening, I'm very much a hip hop head too, coming out of Wu-Tang and Nas and Jay-Z and all these guys. I wasn't really hip to the music, jazz music as a whole anyway. But it just something stuck with me, and then I started hearing, like the Tribe Called Quest. I would hear references from jazz records like Red Clay and Freddie Hubbard and stuff. I was like, okay, now it's starting to make sense. I can, understand what's happening. Long story short, I went to Georgia State, auditioned, because my whole senior year I was just in the practice room, just practicing, practicing, practicing. I was like, I gotta learn this guitar. And I auditioned and accepted into the Georgia State School of Music, and studied there and ended up actually finishing Georgia State, but I got a business degree and a minor in music just because my dad later came back and was like, "Hey man, you don't need no degree to play music." I didn't have a degree, blah blah blah. And you kind of lean on your parents for some advice, and I ended up, I guess, to satisfy my dad, I got a business degree, but it actually helped me in the long, it's been helping me dealing with this whole business of music. A lot of cats don't deal with the business side. They just focus on the music and then end up kind of lost in the shuffle. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny,
Yeah.
you said you wanted to be a producer, so and correct me if I'm wrong, like the initial dream or goal was to be a hip hop producer, right?
Right at the time, yeah. Yeah.
But your teacher, I mean, he took you a different route, and it led, to what, in my opinion, you've become an amazing jazz guitarist. And I don't want to just classify you as a jazz guitarist because I know you play any and everything.
Right.
Thank God for the teacher, because if it,
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I'm a very spiritual person. I feel like, you know, everybody has a purpose in this life, man, and that person's purpose was to steer me in that direction to get me to where I am today. And my purpose as I meet, younger kids in college and stuff, and I have students, my purpose is to hopefully get them to open their minds to other music, especially nowadays where everything, I feel like we're in a age of spin where, it's nothing is real. It seems like nothing is real anymore. Everything is like, in a fake. You understand what I'm saying? It's just like it doesn't seem real. But my objective, when I'm teaching kids or just when I'm playing in front of my audience or whatever, is just to be like, hey, this music is still great music. You might not be hip to it. You may not be privy to what's going on, but it's something about it that you like, obviously. So, I just want to introduce you to something that's real. You know what I'm saying?
exactly. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this because I consider you a connoisseur of jazz,
Right,
and we all know that jazz as a genre, it's sort of been pushed to the back burner. Well, in terms of it being popular music,
right.
there's still a lot of great artists doing great things. But I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about the current state of jazz?
Actually, I honestly feel like it's in a renaissance type of period. I mean, I feel like it's coming back just in a different form. Like you have more of a melting pot or a conglomerate of hip hop, jazz, R&B like fused together. So jazz, like Miles said, it's I don't you don't I even myself try not to term my music as jazz, like they say, like Miles was saying, jazz is just a four-letter word because it's just social music now. It's like It's just a conglomeration of everything, hip hop, R&B, gospel. To me, that's all jazz as long as you're having a conversation with the other musicians that are on stage and also with the audience that you're engaging with. And it's just improvisational music. So I feel like the current state of jazz actually it's in a good place. It's just the powers that be tend to kind of push it to the back burner because it's such a powerful music. Like it's to me, it's very emotionally driven, and it has a lot of, it carries a lot of weight in regard to how it affects people emotionally. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, of
um,
course.
versus pop culture music where it's just so square and cut and dry, and they just try to force feed you this stuff. I don't want to down degrade or anything for those who enjoy pop music, but it's just the same old stuff, and then you get something like what they term jazz or social music, where it's like it just opens your mind up to so many other possibilities in music. So to your point, I think jazz is in a good place right now. I mean, you have a lot of prominent musicians like Robert Glasper, even Kamasi Washington, these guys who are taking hip hop, elements of hip hop and fusing it. Even, most of Kendrick Lamar's crew. I'm a big, like, still big hip hop head, but Kendrick Lamar, most of the cats that come out of his camp, Terrence Martin, all these guys are jazz, what they call jazz musicians who, are still doing hip hop, still influencing other areas of music. That's why I think it's in a good place because now they have no choice but to get hip to the music. And then from there, it's up to them to go back and dig deeper and be like, okay, let me peel back the layers and find out where did this music actually come from. And then that's when they get introduced to the Charlie Parker or the Miles or the Dizzies or, the Wes Montgomerys and, what I'm saying, Charlie
Yeah.
Christian. So I think it's in a good place. I really do.
And I completely agree with you. And audience, if you're a hip hop head and if you're listening, jazz is really the foundation for a lot of the music that you hear these days. And just a perfect example, I was listening to, and Rod, I'm sure you probably heard of her, Dreezy, the MC out of Chicago. She had
Who was
the
that?
Dreezy. She's an MC out of Chicago. She had the single called "Body" with Jeremiah
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
last year, but on her album, she actually samples Roy Ayers' "Everybody Loves the Sunshine,"
Right. Hmm.
which is one of the most amazing records I've heard. And if you don't know Roy Ayers, an amazing vibraphonist, go check him out. But even you had producers like Jay Dilla, Pete Rock,
Oh man, yeah, those are
right?
top tier producers, and even Ali Shaheed, like back in the '90s with the Tribe. I mean, they were sampling jazz records all day long. Like that was the staple. Because it was so much music happening in each one of the songs, it gave them like a big palette to pull from. Like just
Right.
take 30 seconds of this and loop it, and it's some of the greatest stuff and has ever been created. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. Every starting with even beyond Tribe Called Quest, but that's something we could probably talk about all day, hip hop
Yeah,
and them
yeah.
sampling jazz. But I wanted to get back to you specifically. I saw on Instagram that you met one of your main influences, George Benson.
Oh man, yeah, George.
And I saw that well, on Instagram, you said that you actually handed him a copy of the Counsel of Elders, which we'll get into in a second. You think he's listened
Hmm.
to it yet?
Knowing George, probably so. I think because I know I didn't get a chance to really converse with him as long as I would have liked to because we were it was at the NAMM show, which is it's like a convention that they have every year to showcase different instruments and all this different stuff that they're trying to get musicians to buy. But he was actually doing a clinic for Ibanez, and after the clinic, I had a chance to go up to him, talk to him, and tell him how much I appreciate him as an artist and pass him a copy of the CD, and he took it. But I know based on other people who like Mark Whitfield, he's a jazz guitarist, real heavy in the '90s, recorded on D'Angelo's records and Chris Bodie and all this stuff. But me and Mark talk, periodically throughout the year, and he said George, I'm sure has listened to it because he listens to everything. Like he's always, taking what he hears, and he might take it and play it or steal a lick or a line. So I'm pretty sure that he wouldn't just discard something, especially something I told him that I attributed to him. So I'm sure he wanted to hear, my take on his songs because I did record on my Counsel of Elders record. I recorded a couple of his songs that I enjoyed from his before he started doing the pop music stuff, like when he was really still doing the more traditional jazz guitar playing.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's funny you said that how he transitioned to pop later on in his career because the guitar playing kind of, I won't say it fell to the wayside, but it wasn't the main piece. It wasn't the main course, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk,
He wanted to get some money.
yeah, yeah. And I don't blame him. And that's one thing I struggle with a lot of times myself. I feel like musicians should be paid their worth and they should be paid for their work. And I know when we really first met at St. James Live
Hmm.
and you were passing out your CDs, I definitely wanted to get one just to support you, man, because I know how important it is. And I know you're not in it solely for the money, but I think you should be paid. You deserve to be
Oh,
paid for what you do.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And while we're talking about George Benson, we can go ahead and jump into the Council of Elders. There's one record specifically, Clockwise, the George
Hmm.
Benson cover
Yep.
that I love. But take us behind the process, well, inside the process of the album creation.
Okay, so this album, I had the revelation. I was just in my practice in my shed. I was like, you know what? I'm always practicing or leaning on these guys. I got, tons of CDs, which are now probably mostly extinct now. Everything is MP3 now, but I have tons of their CDs that I collected, during my college years and all throughout college. I was always listening to these specific musicians just because that's what spoke to me. I mean, there's tons of guitar players of that era of, the 50s, 60s and beyond. But these particular Kenny Burrell, Wes Montgomery, Grant Green. Grant Green was as a I guess fledgling jazz guitarist trying to learn this music for jazz guitar. Grant Green was like the first guitarist I was introduced to because Grant really never played a whole lot of lines. He wasn't a technician, a guitar technician, but he played with great feel and great tone. And the lines he did play, he meant them when he played it, if that makes any sense. So I was like, let me pay tribute to these guys. Like, even though they're passed on, except with the exception of Kenny Burrell and George Benson, I still wanted, and even if they didn't never listen to to the record,
Uh
I
huh.
felt like it was only right for me to pay a tribute to them, but do it in my way. So I tried to pick at least two of their songs, and in some cases maybe three, but two to three of their songs, and then put my own, I guess, stamp on it or my own signature based off of, my influences as a teenager, trying to take some of the hip hop elements that I enjoyed and put that into the record, and as well as, of course, make it a honest tribute to them, to their music, so it's something that they would be proud of. So I got together in my thoughts, and then I also went out there and I looked for clips or interviews of them talking about just whatever influenced them or how they think about the music. So on the record, you'll hear in between the songs like little interview snippets of them talking about what they feel is the most important parts of this music, jazz, and not just this music, but how it has influenced them or who influenced them. On Council number two, it's an interview with George Benson talking about how Grant Green influenced him also.
Yep.
How he was like a major influence in his playing. He said that Grant focused on the melody, and that really stuck with me more than anything because, if you have a strong melody, that's something that people can immediately relate to versus just a bunch of random lines or just a beat or something. The melody is always king, and that's what I felt. So it's, to make a long story short, the record was very much inspired by these guys, and I just wanted to pay tribute to them and use their songs, but put my own spin on it.
And I wanted to point out to the audience there are some covers on the album, but Rod is also a great author himself. He composed three of the tracks are original, correct? Right, Rod?
Yeah, three of them are original. The first one, Jimmy Speaks, I Jimmy Speaks was my first song published ever. Like when I was in college working on my grad degree in jazz studies, I had this idea. Of course, I'm always having ideas, right?
Uh huh.
We think, therefore we are. But anyway, So I had this idea of doing a tribute to Jimmy Smith because once again, these guys that I admire as far as guitarists, George Benson, Kenny Burrell, Grant Green, Wes
Wes, yeah.
Montgomery, yeah, Wes, even some of the more modern cats that I really respect and look up to now, Bobby Broom, Peter Bernstein, all these guys are jazz guitar monsters, but they all played in a organ trio setting first, or they continue to still play in organ trios. So I was like, well, damn, it must, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I was like, dang, it must be some kind of correlation between that. So who was one of the greatest organist that ever walked earth, Jimmy Smith. So I was like, you know what? Jimmy Speaks. That's the name of the song. That's the first cut on the record. And it's just a tribute to Jimmy Smith as being one of the conductors of this whole jazz guitar train. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
So
absolutely.
so Jimmy Speaks features Russell Gunn. I play in the Crunk Jazz Orchestra here in Atlanta, where Russell Gunn is his big band or his version of a jazz big band where we pretty much play. We do Russell's music as well as some other modern day standards, meaning like Elder Barge and Dion Ferris is also she's also a part of she's the main primary vocalist for the big band, the Crunk Jazz Orchestra. But even with Russell Gunn, you know, he also has been an influence on me as a musician because we think alike in the sense that he also infuses hip hop elements into his jazz or his version of what's termed jazz. So I featured him on the title cut, Jimmy Speaks, on the one that's on the Counsel of Elders. And also if you go and check out the previous version, which is more of a hip hop version, it has him on it as well. Really quick, just to go to the other two songs, Goodbye Again, which features a great trumpet player, Lester Walker, he's actually an Alabama native, but he's been in Atlanta for some time. He was once a teacher at Kennesaw State University, but me and him, he was in grad school at Georgia State when I was there in my undergrad, so we developed a strong friendship bond, and he recorded on that. The Goodbye Again it's a story behind that, but we won't get into that. You can
Okay,
check
okay.
out the check out the record. And lastly, the Council of Elders, the title track. That was just something that just was also divinely inspired. I just, sitting in my practice room and just came up with this particular tune, off the top of my head. But I think I've gotten a lot of good reviews on that particular song overseas as well as here. So yeah, those are the three songs that I penned for this record.
And Rod, I have to commend you, me personally. The thought that you put into this album was beyond what most people would do. And you talked about Jimmy Smith briefly. And audience, please go look up Jimmy Smith when you do have time. He was one of the first proponents or advocates of the organ trio, and he was, and Rod, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was mainly the guy that introduced the Hammond B3 organ to jazz.
To the world,
To the
absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean, there were a few guys maybe before Jimmy, but Jimmy he was a rock star of jazz organist, so to speak. I mean, even today, like the Joey DeFrancesco's and all the guys who play jazz organ now, always, I mean, they always go back to Jimmy Smith because he was a dude. He was like when it came to jazz organ, he was the champion of jazz organ.
yeah, he was that guy, and I even read that he was probably the first organist to actually have an album series that heavily featured the organ,
Mm-hmm.
that Hammond
Yep.
B3. And I wanted to ask you on throughout the Council of Elders, you have an organist. It's pretty much set up the way Jimmy Smith and
Right.
when he did play with Wes and George, Grant Green, and Kenny Burrell. Let me ask you this: who is the organist that you're playing with?
So on this record, the personnel is Matt Kaminsky. He's a jazz organist here in the city of Atlanta. He also actually, oddly enough, plays the organ for the Atlanta Braves. He's been the Braves organist for some years now. But Matt Kaminsky is out of Chicago. He's a transplant from Chicago. And then Marlon Patton is on drums. And we recorded, actually, Marlon is a great drummer as well as an awesome studio engineer and studio technician. I mean, he actually recorded this whole project at his house here in Atlanta. And he has so much vintage equipment. I specifically wanted it to sound like vintage, to once again pay tribute to these guys and just try to keep everything in the essence of the organ trio, because that's where to me it all started for Wes, as well as just the jazz guitar as a whole. To me, and in my opinion, the jazz guitar that I like to hear came out of that organ trio setting. So I told Marlon, I was like, hey man, I want it to sound as warm and vintage. So he actually had an old Tascam recorder that's probably dated back to the late 60s, which was perfect for this project. And we recorded it. He mastered it on 2-inch tape, which is almost not heard of nowadays. Everything is in Pro Tools.
Right,
So we
right.
actually did record it in Pro Tools, but when we did the mastering part of it, he recorded it onto the 2-inch tape, and that's the sound that you hear. So it's a warm. One DJ here in Atlanta, Jamal Ahmed from WCLK, he was spinning the record, and he was like, "Man, this sounds like it came right out of the '60s," and that's exactly what I want people to hear. I want them to think like, damn, Rod, it's like stepping in a time machine,
Yeah,
because but stepping in a time machine with a vintage sound, but still being modern, you know what I'm saying?
of course.
So yeah, those are the musicians. Also, of course, there was a tenor sax player, great tenor sax player that also plays in the Crunk Jazz Orchestra with me, named Mike Walton. He recorded on the SOS, and there was a percussionist that plays for Janelle Monáe, actually, Raphael Pierre, and he also recorded percussion on that SOS tune.
And if you haven't heard it, please go check out the Council of Elders. And I know I'll say it probably 5 to 10 more times before we're done. But Rod, I do want to shift gears a bit, and I don't know if it's widely known, but you're actually Musiq Soulchild's guitarist.
Yeah,
And I went and read your bio. You've been with them since 2008, correct?
yeah. I've been with music since 2008, off and on. Like any other artist, they tend to try to switch up and try different things. But primarily, when that thing doesn't work, I get the call to come back. So,
There you
so
go.
I've been in the studio with him and on the road with him off and on since 2008, and we have a good relationship. He's been an influence in just helping me navigate through this business, this music business, and getting to see the other side of how the business works, more on the business side, as well as just touring, seeing the world. I've traveled the world with music. He's recorded on another project that I did, another song called How It Feels, and also a project, the Southwest Terminal project that I was involved in. He actually was featured on the remix to How It Feels. So me and him, we recorded that record initially in 2013, and then we did the remix it was released last year on Rope-A-Dope, the Southwest Terminal record. But yeah, music has been a great, great influence, and I call him Big Brother
Yeah.
because he's been definitely someone to lean on for some additional knowledge in this music business.
I'll even go so far as to say you could call music an R&B institution. I mean, the guy has been around for 15 plus years. For you to be a part of it, that's something really special. I mean, you get up
Yeah,
and
man,
play. Go ahead.
it's so funny that you mentioned that. Like, we were just in California 2 weeks ago. We were doing 4 nights at Yoshi's, which we do typically every year. And sometimes because we're so cool, man, I forget, like, this dude, he's synonymous with modern day soul music. When you think of soul music now, you think of D'Angelo, Musiq Soulchild, Erykah Badu, Jill Scott, maybe. But even in that echelon of soul singers, Musiq Soulchild's name is synonymous. I mean, it sticks out more than anything, not just because his name is Soulchild, but just because of his catalog. He has, I would venture to say, out of the echelon of artists, he has more hits than any of those artists or combined. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
the dude's resume is pretty amazing. And I forget sometimes that this dude is a living legend. I mean, he would definitely, regardless of how the industry tried. The industry is very fickle. They want everybody to be pop now, but but
Right.
regardless of that, I really believe in my heart that 20 or 30 years from now, he'll be that unsung legend, like a Al Green or Donny Hathaway and those people that we grow to love and admire throughout the years.
Yeah, I agree. And you've been a part of a lot of those records, and for
Yeah.
that, so you're going down in history with them. And
I like to think so, man. I really have been blessed, and I like to definitely think that I can have my contribution added to this music.
yeah, and Rod, speaking of history, you were a part of two historic movies. You actually had roles in Cadillac Records and the Bessie Smith biopic.
Yeah, man,
Tell us
that was
about
really
those.
cool. Yeah. So it's so funny. Like in 2008, that was the year that I started with music, and then also I got a call early in 2000 to do Cadillac Records, and so I got the call from a buddy of mine actually who I went to Georgia State with, and he had moved to New York and started playing. His name's Lee Hogan's, and he went on to play with Prince as well as Marcus Miller. But he called me. He's like, "Hey man, they're shooting this movie about Chess Records, and they need a guitarist. If you can get up here, then you got the spot." Initially, I was like, "Well, are they paying for it?" He was like, "Nah, they're not gonna pay for you to come up." But I was like, "Forget it, I'm on the way." So I flew up there and had a chance to, be in the movie, and it was awesome because, Beyonce, I was in three scenes with her, like standing next to her, and I got a chance to meet Jeffrey Wright, who was another great actor, Cedric the Entertainer. It was just awesome experience. Adrian Brody. So it was a great experience for me, and it kind of opened my eyes to a whole nother playing field, like acting and getting involved in that. That's a whole nother arena that I kind of like. I enjoyed the experience, and I hope to do more of that. And then the Bessie project actually was filmed here in Atlanta, and I got the similar situation. I got a call from a musician who had referenced me to be a part of it. The difference with the Bessie experience is that they wanted me to literally learn all the guitar parts and the songs that I was featured on for
Wow.
the Bessie. And I was like, we only had a day to do it, so I was like, okay, that's cool, I got this.
Yeah, yeah.
So I went in and got jumped in the shed, as I call it, in the practice room, and learned all the songs that they asked, and got a chance to meet Queen Latifah and
Mike
Mike
Epps.
Epps.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike Epps. It was cool. It was a really good experience. I was glad that I got camera time because some of the guys were a little upset after, if you've ever been on a movie set, it's a lot of sitting, a lot of waiting, a lot of just, and you're just hoping and praying that, hey, with all this waiting and sitting, that we'll get some camera time so we can say, hey, that's my face on that movie
Right.
or something. So yeah, it was a great experience, and I'm looking forward to doing more movies, hopefully in the near future.
Rod, you work with a lot of great artists throughout your career, and I mean those artists include Howard Hewitt of Shalimar,
Yeah,
Selena Johnson, Bishop Paul Morton, Monica, Jennifer Holliday, Dion
yeah.
Ferris, Jagged Edge. I mean, is there anyone that you haven't worked with that you want to work with one day?
In all honesty, and not to, I guess not to take away from any of those artists, but I definitely want to work. I'd like to work more jazz artists. I mean, if it would be awesome to work with like Terrence Blanchard or somebody like that who I admire for his playing as well as his movie scoring and stuff. Like I want to continue to push myself as a musician in a different realm so that, it's just another source of inspiration, if you will. I really dig Terrence's playing. I dig the way he approaches the music. But it's so many other artists, man. I couldn't even, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you how many other artists I would love to work with. Every time I work with a different artist, it's a different experience. And I'm very big on experiences. I feel like we as individuals, we should experience as many different things in this life as we can, hopefully positive, all positive experiences, but even some of the negative experiences, hopefully we learn from those experiences and grow as individuals. But I really feel like we have to experience as many different things just to grow as individuals. And then once our time is up, we can never have any regrets of not being or not saying that, hey, we lived full lives. So I just say that to say, I welcome any artists, even the ones that aren't necessarily household names or whatever. If I feel that they have something to offer me and I can offer them something back, I look forward to working with them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. And I know we haven't known each other long, but I can tell right now that you're a very ambitious guy. And if yeah, if you look at your album, The Counsel of Elders, you put yourself among, in my opinion, and you would know better than me, but you set yourself among the greatest guitarists of all time, in my opinion, and not just jazz guitarists. I think these four can stand with the Hendrix, the Claptons, the who
Oh, absolutely. They're just guitar great musicians and period. And that's what I aspire to be. I just at the end of the day, I want when I'm expired and moved on to the next life, I want people to appreciate the contribution that I made to music, and just appreciate me as being a great musician. And to me, that's the legacy that I can leave for my kids, and then they can leave for their kids, and so on and so forth. I believe that legacy is more important than anything, money and all of that, because that's something that will last forever as long as it's continued to be pushed. So that's my goal in life, just to leave a legacy. And it can be difficult, like to your point, sometimes when you have to make decisions based on finance versus love, I guess if you will.
right, right.
But I try to keep as well rounded as possible as a musician, so that even no matter what genre of music I'm playing in at the particular time, I'm still able to put my own signature on it, so that they can say, oh, I know that's Rod, that's his sound, that's him, try to develop my own sound in whatever genre, whether it be gospel, R&B, hip hop, whatever. If I'm recording, I still want people to know, okay, that's Rod.
I wanted to talk about this as well. We actually didn't get into it, but recently, you and Saunders Sermons, and audience, if you don't know, Saunders Sermons is two-time Grammy-winning trombonist. He and
Hmm.
Rod put out a cover of Prince's "When Doves Cry." So, Rod,
Hmm.
how did that all come together?
So I've known Saunders. I actually met Saunders through Lee, once again, the guy that got me the gig on the Cadillac Records movie. We actually met around that same year in 2008 while I was in New York doing the movie. And Saunders is like one of those guys and those personalities that you want to be around. Like this dude, this is a hip cat. Like I want to, hang with this dude. Like so. Later on, as he eventually moved to Atlanta and we reconnected, and I was like, you know what? I want to do a record, and this is me in my mind again. I
Uh-huh.
was like, oh, Prince had just passed away. My stepfather was a huge Prince fanatic. I'm talking about like every Prince album. We had the posters all over, and that stayed with me, and I became a huge Prince fan as well, just for his musicianship and his, compositions. And I said, I want to do When Doves Cry, but I'm gonna do it a totally different way. I'm gonna do it my way. So I created the music and everything. Got Saunders into the studio. Another good great pianist here that just relocated to Atlanta from Ohio, named Rashawn Murph, did the piano after. I gave them a template to work with, and got Saunders and Rashawn in the studio, and also a drummer named Louis Sticks Newsom that is also another Ohio transplant here to Atlanta. And I had given them the sheet music to learn and everything. We hit the studio and it was just like magic. It's like, man, this is killing. And Saunders did it. Honestly, Saunders recorded that song in like, we did maybe 2 or 3 takes,
Wow.
and it turned out to be a really great song. We got good write-ups in Soul Bounce and some other soul internet blogs and magazines, and it's been doing well on the internet radios and stuff, Pandora, as well as Spotify and all the other streaming sites. It was a good experience, and I think it was something that Prince, if he was still alive, when Prince was alive, he wouldn't allow anybody to record his music.
Right.
I don't know if you knew that, but
Yeah.
like since he's been passed away, everybody's trying to do, remakes of Purple Rain and all this stuff, but very few, if not any, have tried to take the music into a whole different direction. I feel like me and Saunders did on this particular rendition of When Doves Cry. So I think Prince would be smiling down in agreement with what we did.
Rod, we have a lot of aspiring musicians and artists listening right now, and I just wanted you to, from someone who's done it before, you're where a lot of musicians or artists want to be. So, what advice would you give to any artist or musician who's listening right now?
The primary advice is just I always have this saying, you gotta continue to practice. If you don't shed or if you don't practice every day, then you're actually doing yourself a disservice. So I would say just be diligent in your practice. Whatever music or genre of music you like or love, just try to immerse yourself in that, and then immerse yourself in something else that may be able to contribute to you as an individual in your pursuance of whatever. If you want to be a producer, if you want to be a musician or whatever, just try to constantly keep an open mind to music, and just always be on your grind, because you never know when you get that opportunity. And when that opportunity comes, then you got to be able to sit in it and live in it to the point to where you win, or you eventually get that opportunity becomes yours. So that's the primary thing that I would tell any aspiring musician. Just always be ready. Just always be ready, and just pay attention to as much detail to whatever you're doing as possible, because that stuff carries a lot of weight with artists. The fact that you are a positive attitude, you pay attention to detail, and that you're just proficient at whatever you're doing, whether it be making beats, making tracks, playing guitar, playing piano, etc.
I definitely agree. And Rod, before we close out, I just have a few questions, and it's similar to what we did in the beginning, similar to the warm up.
Hmm.
And I think
Hmm.
you'll like these questions. And it's only four of them, and they'll actually go pretty quick. So, if you could surround yourself with the perfect band, what other musicians would you pick?
Man, you can't ask a question like that because there's so many great musicians, man. I'm studying my contemporaries. I'm like studying, stealing some of their stuff.
We
But
can go
I
ahead.
would say this: some of the musicians that I of modern era that I would have loved or would have liked to have in a unit are cats like Kenny Kirkland, and on keys, on piano. I'm trying to think of a drummer like Chris Dave on the drums. Those are the kind of guys that you never know what you're gonna get. As soon as they sit down at their instrument, it could be they might play jazz for 1 minute, and then they might go into some hip hop. They might go into some funk, like just well-rounded musicians, and to the point to where it's authentic. It's not like we're playing at something. It's like we're playing this funk groove, but then we're gonna go play this jazz groove, and we're gonna go play this hip hop groove, and it's gonna be all real. You know what I'm saying? So those are the kind of musicians I just like to be around, well-rounded musicians who can play different styles and play them authentically. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely understand. So, Rod, what's the best concert you've ever been to?
The best concert I've ever been to, I will say this: 2014 in Australia. It was a concert called Soul Fest, and it had Musiq Soulchild. Actually, I was a part of the concert, so it was Musiq Soulchild, D'Angelo, Maxwell, Aloe Black, Common, Most Def, Leela James, Angie Stone. And this tour was like, this tour will never happen ever again in life.
Right.
It was that epic, to the point to where the promoter ran out of money, and he had to cancel the forthcoming year Soul Fest tour. And from my understanding, the whole thing is defunct now. But that year and that tour will go down in history to me as one of the most epic soul music tours ever. I mean, we toured in 5 cities in Australia: Perth, Sydney, Melbourne. Well, actually, we did Auckland, New Zealand, which isn't necessarily a part of Australia, but it's and Brisbane, Brisbane, Australia. And it was just awesome, man. I mean, and what was more awesome is that the camaraderie amongst all the musicians, it was all love. Like, it was no ego tripping, none of that. We went to hang out in clubs in Melbourne. And oh, I forgot to mention Anthony Hamilton, who was
Wow.
an amazing artist also. I'm sorry, I forgot. but
You just adding on
uh,
to it.
but yeah, man. So it was just like, Anthony's camp was there, D'Angelo's camp was there. Common and Most Def was freestyling in the club, and Common to me, as a hip hop head, bro, like he's a legend in his own right. Also, all of these guys, all of these, performers were legends, are legends, living legends. But yeah, that's the most. I was done. I didn't need to see any more concerts after that.
Wow. Yeah,
I'm like, I would love to see Kendrick Lamar in concert as well. I really appreciate what that brother is offering right now to just hip hop music as a whole and just music period.
yeah, he's doing some amazing stuff. And well,
Yeah.
while we're talking about Kendrick, do you have a favorite song of this year, 2017?
Kendrick,
Well, it could be any artist, any genre.
actually, I'll say these some of the artists that of 2017 that stuck out for me, other than Kendrick Lamar. I dig Anderson .Paak. I don't know if you are hip to him.
Oh yeah, of course. No
Uh,
worries.
yeah,
Malibu.
yeah, man, yep.
He a bad
And
boy.
honestly, Hiatus Coyote, which they're not. I mean, they haven't. I don't think they have a new project of this year, but I've really started digging in their catalog. I guess, a late comer in that regard, but I really dig what they're offering. So yeah, those are like in my heavy rotation list as of recent in that regard.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned them because they opened Drake's album, his last album, the More Life album.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a sample, but just last question. This
Mm-hmm.
might be a tough one. If you could only listen to one album for the rest of your life, what would it be?
One album for the rest of my life. That's a tough one, man.
Yeah,
Illmatic by Nas.
there you go. That's a good one. You picked a good one. You picked a good one because
Yeah,
you get a lot of everything from Illmatic.
a lot of everything. Illmatic. Yeah, man. That record that ushered me into my adolescence right there.
Illmatic, yeah. I mean, you picked a good one.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, Nas is one of hip hop's, and not just hip hop, but music in general. One
Hmm.
of music's great thinkers,
Yep.
in my opinion. So, shout out to Nas.
Yes, sir.
But Rod, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. And before we go, audience, go check out Rod. He'll be at St. James Live, August 27th.
Yep.
The address is 3220 Butner Road, Suite 240, Atlanta, GA 30331. Doors open at 5 o'clock. I'll be there. Rod's going to be there. A lot of people are going to be there. If you miss it, I mean, you're missing out. You're missing on a very special treat. And, Rod, what are you going to do at St. James?
So like, on the 27th, I'm gonna feature some of the songs off the Council of Elders. I'm also I'm gonna do a few covers that you may or may not have heard. And I don't want to give away the farm, but yeah, you're definitely gonna be in for a treat. I'm gonna do a variety of things that I've recorded, as well as some things that I will record or
Yeah.
possibly record. So y'all come on out. St. James is a great live music venue. It's actually one of the few, I guess, remaining live music venues that offer food and as well as drinks and stuff. And the atmosphere and the energy in the place is really cool. So I think I know you'll dig the spot, and I know you'll dig what we have to bring.
Oh, yeah. It's an amazing venue. I've been myself. I didn't have the food, but I'm sure it's good. People told me great things, but it's a very laid back, very relaxed spot. Great place to go. Fellas, if you're listening, take your ladies. Rod gonna help you out that night. He, trust me, you after you take her to this spot, you'll you'll be in for a good night. So
Definitely coming back. We'll leave it like that.
absolutely. But again, check out Rod Sunday, August 27th, 2017. It's in a few weeks at St. James Live in Atlanta, Georgia. It's right off 285 off Camp Creek. So come check
Right.
us out. And follow Rod. Go follow Rob. He does these amazing tutorials on YouTube. So all you guitar players, if you want to learn something, go check out Rod's tutorials. I mean, Rod, you have like a couple hundred videos up?
Yeah, man, it's getting up there. I just it's my way of practicing it, and I started doing these little video tutorials, I guess maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, and people have been hitting me from all over the world, encouraging me to continue to put it up. Aspiring guitarists as well as some who are even seasoned in advance. Even Bobby Broom and Mark Whitfield, like these guys, been like, man, we enjoyed watching you play our stuff. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And these are guys that I look to and lean on for advice as well as just learning from. Because as we get more proficient, we don't necessarily have teachers, so to speak, but the albums and the people we admire and look to become our sources of inspiration and teaching. So I just do this as a way to teach myself, but then I put it back out, to the world. So hopefully somebody watching it can get inspired and learn from it too. So yes, my all my social handles is I'm on Instagram, I'm RHJ Guitar. On YouTube, it's Rod Harris Guitar 09. On Facebook, it's just Rod Harris Jr. or Rod Harris Jr. Live. So yeah, hit me up at my website, www.rodharrisjr.com. So I always love to talk to people, talk shop about guitar, music, whatever. I'm a music nerd, so please don't hesitate to hit me with any questions or comments or just whatever. I'm open. I'm an open book in that regard.
He is, and we just had an hour-long interview, and audience, please go out and support Rod. I mean, he's an amazing guy, as you can hear, highly intelligent guy. He's a student of music. He's what I like to call a savant. He's a music scholar. And he's in the short time that I've known him, he's taught me so much personally. And Rod, I thank you for that, for teaching me what you have taught me, and most importantly, for coming on the podcast. It really means a lot.
Man, Jay, I appreciate you, brother. I'm glad we reconnected at Hartsville International Airport.
Yeah, hey Rod, you know what's funny? I saw you, Musiq Soulchild, and Jazzy Faye in the same day. Jazzy Faye,
Wow.
Jazzy Faye was coming down the escalator.
That's crazy,
So
man.
so that was a good day for me. But
Yeah, man.
audience, thanks again for tuning in. We appreciate it. And Rod, you got any closing thoughts?
No, I look forward to seeing everybody August 27th at St. James, and I appreciate all the support. Appreciate you, Jay, for having me on. And I got more music to come. There's going to be a second Counsel of Elders Volume 2 coming up. Tentative release date for that is going to be at the beginning of 2018. It's going to be winter 2017 or 2018. And there's going to be some good music, more original compositions, as well as the theme for this particular project is going to be to feature the guitarists of the 90s that kind of influenced me. So it's going to be a similar concept, but just now we're moving out of the 60s and 70s time period and kind of bringing it more to the modern era. So yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that, and I hope that you all enjoy what you hear so far and what you've heard.
All right, cool. Well, thanks again, Rod, and audience. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Dig, if you will, the picture of you and I engage in a kiss. The sweat of your body covers me. Can you, my darling, can you picture this? Dream if you can, a courtyard, an ocean of violets in bloom. Strike curious poses. They feel the heat between me and you. How can you just leave me standing alone in the world is so cold? Maybe I'm just too demanding. Maybe I'm just like my father, too bold. Maybe you're just like your mother. She's never satisfied. Why do we scream at each other? 'Cause this is what it sounds like when doves cry.